If you're a Toriyama historian, then you know it's no secret that Toriyama is a huge fan of Star Wars, and there's lots of influences in Toriyama's work from Star Wars. But now, in 2015, and you could make an argument maybe it was 2013, but I would say it's much stronger in 2015. Both Dragon Ball and Star Wars have made tremendous comebacks in the pop culture realm. Now, as of this recording, we don't have a Dragon Ball Super dub yet, but I can't even imagine how much bigger it's going to get when this dub actually comes out. But it's still very well known. Star Wars makes a comeback. Force Awakens breaks box office records, and it's interesting. Both franchises come back based initially on nostalgia to bring back the old fans. They obviously bring in new fans, but there's something missing with the way Toei is handling Dragon Ball. So on this video, let me go ahead and introduce who's with me. We're going to talk about it. Please welcome and subscribe to his channel if you have not. The most intelligent man in the Dragon Ball community, according to many. Real to Real Productions. Mark.
It's such a nice intro, man. Like I don't necessarily think I'm the smartest guy in the community, but I'll take it, man. Hi, thank you for having me, man.
Yes, we're gonna talk about. Well, you're the thing about you is you're very knowledgeable about things outside of just Dragon Ball, which is actually why I picked you for this topic, because even though it just kind of came out of nowhere, yeah, you're one of the smartest. So Dragon Ball, Star Wars. Okay, Dragon Ball comes back in 2015. We got Resurrection F. We got Super, new TV series. Star Wars had still been around. You know, we had Clone War, we had Rebels. It's still around, but it really fired up with Force Awakens. Now we've got a brand new series of movies coming out, the Star Wars anthology series. We've got rumors of TV shows. We've got a brand new multiple comic book series coming out, you know, the new canon, so to speak. And it just seems like Disney is really trying to do their absolute best to make back that $4 billion. Now, obviously, they've already made that money back, you know, and then some, but Dragon Ball just seems to be, I don't know. I don't want to say it's more of it's a disappointment necessarily, but I don't feel like Toei is really maximizing the profitability or maximizing the, I guess, the popularity that Dragon Ball has. I mean, every week Super is one of the top 5 rated shows in Japan, anime wise. So I just feel like they could be doing so much more.
I completely agree. And if I could take something that you've said on multiple occasions is Dragon Ball to me seems to be, and as you as well, is it seems to be kind of expanding the overall Dragon Ball universe with almost every single episode now. I mean, almost every single episode does a little bit more to kind of keep expanding this kind of concept, you know, the concept of time travel, the concept of multiple universes and all this other stuff, Zeno and all of them. And yet it doesn't seem to want to actually explore anything. It's more interested in going, oh, isn't this cool? Isn't this cool? Isn't that cool? And instead of taking the time to explain, it's like we just had a multiple universe tournament for the very first time, something that a lot of people were very excited for and everything. And instead of exploring that, we went straight back into time travel, something that we've been familiar with, something that we've been exposed to before. And it makes me wonder why they're doing this. Now, they could be doing this to be like, okay, we're going to kind of mold the two into like, well, this is time travel and multiple universe storytelling. That's kind of what this last episode brought to us, but I'm not necessarily sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, the last whole arc has done that. But the thing that, you know, to touch on what you're talking about, Dragon Ball Super has done an unbelievable amount of world building. And I would go so far as to say that the beautiful thing about the Dragon Ball story is that you're always going to get world building from the beginning. It's a very small, very, you know, interpersonal story at first. And then as you watch Dragon Ball, you get to explore, like, the world. And then by the time that Dragon Ball ends and you go to Dragon Ball Z, we go beyond the world. Now we got aliens and other planets. And then we have the time travel aspect. And then we have the heavens, other world, demons, and gods in the Buu arc. And now with Super, it's like, okay, we've explored the future, we've explored the past, we've explored all this shit. Let's do other universes. But I think that the difference is that with Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, like you said, those things were given time to be expanded upon. Whereas in Super, you've got all these new characters from Universe 6 and We've got the Great Priest, and we've got all these characters. And I feel that with the exception of Zamasu and a little bit of Hit, a little bit of Kaba, and a little bit of like Black, I don't think they've really delved enough into the backstory. Whereas with Star Wars, Disney puts out a comic for every one of these characters. The Poe Dameron series out now, that just came out recently. So all these new characters get their own like manga series. They get their own. Well, it wouldn't be a manga; it'd be a comic. But you get what I'm saying. They get their own little like backstory. Whereas Dragon Ball Super just seems to be rushing through all this, and we don't get to really embrace and love these characters. Like, no, I don't know anybody who's told me that Kabe is their favorite character. There's just not enough there. I like what we saw from him, but there's just not enough there yet. We need more of a backstory and more of an expansion. That's one thing I think that Dragon Ball can learn from Star Wars.
I feel like if I can go back to what we did a video that probably never came out, I don't think, but one thing I said in that video, and I made a video on my own channel about this, is one of the good things about Dragon Ball, at least in the 90s, was in relation to Star Wars or almost anything else, especially Star Wars or Marvel, kind of the three big like huge pop culture things going on now, is Dragon Ball actually had kind of an ongoing serialized story. Whether it was like 500 episodes was not the point. It was something that we can go to week to week to week and watch basically this long form story from the beginning to end and be kind of enamored with everything that we're seeing. Now, both of these stories have come back. I mean, at the same time, Star Wars was kind of the same way in its own right. You know, it had this basically serialized story where they were going to focus on the Skywalkers, be it, Anakin or Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Throughout the first 6 films. And I feel like one of the things that you were touching upon that Dragon Ball hasn't, and Toei doesn't necessarily want to do, which seems very counterintuitive to this day and age, the market of 2015, 2016, just kind of world building, story strategy, kind of getting the most out of your own material, is having the nuts.
The stones, baby.
The stones to build characters and build stories around characters other than your kind of pivotal people. I mean, Star Wars still has its episodes, but like as you said, it has Rebels, it has comic books, it has books, it has all this stuff becoming more and more to the forefront. I mean, actually making the Star Wars story, like Rogue One, actually making that into a movie is a huge deal. It's a huge deal because there is this sense, there's been this huge pushback for Hollywood for a really long time that you cannot go beyond like a main character in a story. It's one of the reasons that a lot of people think.
But
that,
now Marvel has changed the game with the cinematic universe.
Yes, and I feel like it's one of the reasons, like, it's one of the reasons a lot of people have argued with me that, Terminator can't exist without Kyle Reese and, John Connor and all that. I completely disagree.
Yes,
it's a huge universe. It's a huge, like, any type of story can work in that universe. And sticking to these characters that have been canonized in the very beginning is what's hurting it. And I feel like the same can be said for Dragon Ball. Because what we've seen in Super is we have all these interesting characters. Kaba, Hit, Black Goku, Zamasu, even Beerus and Whis, for God's sakes, Champa and Vados. They're all incredibly interesting characters, and yet the series seems so gung-ho and giving us nothing but Goku and Vegeta. And I feel like that is if they have a flaw at all, that's their most basic flaw.
I agree with you, and I think that these other characters, like your Hits and your Kabas, deserve to have more expansion. I do. And it's funny because one thing that irritates me is that Dragon Ball Super's forgetting to really look at what modern television has been doing, because really, when you break it all down, the stuff that really started this whole cinematic universe craze was television and the resurgence of TV. You've got shows like Lost and like The Sopranos that had episodes that were character-centric episodes. You could do things in TV shows you could not do in movies because movies had runtimes. You got a 1.5 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour runtime. You can't give everybody a backstory. But with TV, you've got weeks and weeks of episodes. You could have entire mini arcs dedicated to these characters, like your Shampas. And I don't think people would tune out. I think Toei, like you said, is so afraid to diverge away from the Goku and Vegeta show that they're missing on opportunities to get other characters over. So that maybe in the future, if God forbid something happens to Masako Nozawa, we can have more Dragon Ball based on these other characters and still keep the cash train coming in. But the characters have to get over, man. And I think that Dragon Ball is really fucking up with that. I think Toei is so narrow-minded. The fact that they haven't put the dub out yet, the fact that they haven't even put the Latin American dub out, which is bigger, way bigger there than it is in the United States. There's just so much, like, every time I talk about this topic, it brings my piss to a boil. Because I think there's so much shit that Toei's fucking up with right now. And like you said, Star Wars is flooding the market with shit. Is it too much? Maybe. But I think Dragon Ball Super is certainly doing too little. I do think it's too little.
I do want to say, when it comes to all of this, I do want to say it seems very counterintuitive, or maybe kind of stepping backwards for Toei, because I'm not saying that they have to make, mini arcs for other characters. I would,
or at least mini OVAs, comics.
Well,
There's millions of ways to do it.
I'm just gonna say, I mean, what did we get in Dragon Ball? It wasn't abundance, but we got a Bardock OVA, we got a Trunks OVA.
Not just that, bro. Even in Dragon Ball, we had episode-centric stuff that wasn't in the manga, like the Namu stuff. That was not in the manga. We got stuff with Goku going back in time and meeting Roshi when he was younger. So you have development for Roshi, Sudu Senin, and Mutaito. That's brilliant stuff, and Super is just leaving it behind. And they've done a good job in the Trunks arc of having Trunks interact with Gohan, 18, Krillin. They've done a great job of doing these things, right? But what about the characters we just saw in Universe 6? Now, of course, in their defense, Mark, we don't know if they're saving this for the future. Maybe we will go to Planet Sadal, Salad, whatever. Maybe this will happen in the future. I just think, like you said, that it's not natural storytelling. Sadal should have been the next thing, and then we do Trunks. My opinion.
It feels very counterintuitive, like I said, to go from one huge, like kind of, canon breaking concept to multiple universes back to something that we're fairly familiar with, and back to a character and a situation that it seems familiar, when they could be doing so much other cool, new and interesting stuff, and focusing on people that we haven't ever really gotten to know and we want to kind of get to know. I feel like the one thing, like I said, is they don't have the stones, the balls, whatever you want to say, to focus away from Goku and Vegeta. And I'm not saying that that's a detriment to them, because obviously it is working. Like you said, it's one of the most popular shows in Japan right now, and it's been working for like the last 30 years, for God's sakes. But the point is the older we get and the more that we grew up with this stuff, we realize that it's really hard, for me at least, to kind of sit there and say that they're not taking steps backwards from what they were like at the beginning. And considering the evolution of television and those, like, in the last 20 years since Dragon Ball was on, it's somewhat disappointing. It feels like we should have gotten something bigger and better than what we had before, and it feels like. And
not to mention, I just want to, not to interrupt you, but considering the fact that they now know how big the show is, it's a top ranked show every week. It's they didn't even know that Dragon Ball was big over here until they went to the Resurrection F premiere, which is very, very closed-minded and sad. Japan is a notable xenophobic culture, and yet I feel like they should. I think they need to get with the program, because even Nintendo and gaming companies are getting with the program here, and I think that Toei is. Dragon Ball is so beloved, and there's so much money literally burned every week that this dub isn't out, bro.
Mm-hmm. It's legitimately sad. There should be a simulcast, but that's a video. That's another video
that everybody's already done.
Yeah, that everyone's already done.
What else do you think Dragon Ball can learn from Star Wars before we get out of here, as far as like getting itself over?
I think
like the merchandise is also pretty big internationally, not just in Japan.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I feel like if you want to sell any type of content, you need overabundance of merchandise. It's not this. The story will not. The television show will not sell itself. I feel like you said earlier, the promotional material is good with the manga coming out every month, but if the manga began to like get away from the main story and started being like here's what Hit's up to, and here's what Kaba's up to, and here's what all these other people are up to.
Agreed.
Like that would be mind blowing. Like I would love to see that every single month. I would think not only me but a lot of people would flock to that because it would be completely new and original, and not just the story, not just the manga or the anime
Not just
itself.
the Goku and Vegeta story.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Well, everybody go and check out Real to Real Pro. I'll put the link down below if you haven't already checked it out. Very, very good, very thought-provoking content. Thank you for being here, Mark.
Oh no, definitely anytime, man.
Yes, and thanks all of you. Let us know down below what you think about all this. I think that when you look at the way that Disney handles Star Wars, it's so much better than the way Toei handles Dragon Ball, and it hurts me as a Dragon Ball fan. I love both franchises, and I think that there's so much potential to be bigger. Talk to y'all down the road.